Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the database tutorial of the summer round 1 2020. This course is going to be conducted over 4 weeks. You will have each week approximately 3 tutorials plus the lectures plus the labs. So this course is not a very small one. So please be always up to date so that you are not ever left behind, and that you get the questions and you get to ask any question that you have up to date so that you are not going to be too late and you have so much to study. So please be always ready and study as we go. This course is going to be consisting of 2 parts. As I said, there are the tutorials that are separate from the labs. The tutorials and the labs are not having the same objective at the end of the day. However, they are going to cover different concepts. So you need to listen to both. The tutorials are mainly the theoretical part of this course. So we are going to have practical examples that are not that are covering the theoretical part. However, the labs are going to be the real practical part of this course. You are going to build the database itself in the labs. So they are separate from one another. And the tutorials are going to be examined, or you will have the questions like the ones in the tutorials in your quizzes as well as your final. However, the labs are going to mainly cover the concepts that you are going to make use of them in the project. So both of them unitely do the same thing. However, they cover a bit of different concepts. So you need to listen to both, and you need to always be aware of both, because in both you are going to be questioned but differently. The lecturer is going to be Dr. Nada Sharaf, and this tutorial is covered by me, Marna Shafai. Firstly, I want to introduce to you the course. What is a database? You heard the name database, which is the title of this course. However, what is really a database? Now, any website that you see or any application that you make use of consists actually of mainly 2 parts, which are related with one another: the front end and the back end. Okay, now let us question, what is a front end? هو ايه بالظبط الفرونت end ده؟ What is the front end? The front actually is the user interface, is what you see. These are the pictures that you see, the information that you see, the pieces of information, the colors, the buttons, and so on. This is the front end, the user interface. زي ال GUI that you have seen in the game course. The GUI is just an interface, a picture of everything that is just some elements that are put next to one another. And what is the back end? The back end is mainly a database. It consists of the engine. هو في engine اللي بيشغل كل حاجة with one another. However, the main core of the back end is a database. A database ده بيعمل ايه؟ It holds all the information that are shown in the front end. يعني في front end we see, for example, some information, some data. All this data are actually stored in a database. Okay? طيب عايزين define a database. نفهم the definition of a database. What does a database do, or what is it actually? A database in general is any collection of data. This is a very important point. هي collection of some data. طيب a collection of data دي or information دي ايه المميز فيها؟ why is it not on paper? why is it not just a word؟ يعني ليه ما ناخدش مثلا word او اكسل ونحط فيه شويه داتا وخلاص ونستخدمهم بقى عندنا في access them بقى من اي ويب سايت او application. Why is a database important? Because it's specially organized. هي organized بطريقة محددة. احنا عملنا لها organization in order to achieve some things. يعني احنا we organized it in order to achieve specific goals. ايه الجولز بتاعتنا؟ ان احنا يبقى عندنا efficient search and retrieval. في الاخر ايه اهم حاجه بالنسبه لي في الداتابيز؟ ان هي تكون organized in such a way that I will be able to search efficiently and retrieve any information that I need. At the end of the day, the database الobjective بتاعها is to hold the data that I need. So whenever I need any piece of information, I should be able to get it efficiently. ما ينفعش اقعد استنى مثلا for example 5 seconds. مين هيقعد مستنى مستني information تطلع له in 5 seconds. No one. We want it to be efficient as fast as possible. Okay? وداتابيسز are structured to facilitate the storage. يعني احنا عايزين في الاخر نفاسيليتيت الستورج in order to get الريتريفل ده in order ان احنا نعمل الريتريفل efficiently and also do the modifications. يعني for example if I want to modify a specific information, واحد دخل غير a specific information about himself, we want the database to be modified. يبقى لازم تبقى structured in a well organized way in order to be able to modify any piece of information. Also the deletion of data is important as well as maintaining consistent data. يعني ايه بقى maintaining consistent data, which is a very important point برضو. consistent data يعني ايه؟ يعني ما ينفعش الداتا عمرها تكون inconsistent. معناها ايه inconsistent؟ يعني information مش ماشيه مع بعض. For example لو انا عندي database وعندي في database for example ال age of some employees, لو انا قلت ان ال age of these employees must always be less than 60, يعني انا عملت constraint, عملت condition لازم كل الداتابيس بتاعتي hold فيها الانفورميشن دي, يبقى لازم anytime هروح اكسس الداتابيس بتاعتي دي لازم كل حد جوه ال age column ده, يعني كل حد عنده age attribute ده لازم يكون less than 60. يعني يبقى لازم دايما تبقى consistent with all the constraints او all the conditions that I enforce. يبقى لازم تبقى دايما ايه consistent. تاني نرجع نقرا for just a recap. What is a database? It's any collection of data or information that is specially organized for efficient search and retrieval. Databases are structured to facilitate the storage, retrieval, modification and deletion of data, as well as maintaining consistent data. This is the main objective of a database. Let us cover it up. The important concepts that are in the definition of a database is the organization of data. The data needs to be organized. تاني حاجة, we need to have efficient retrieval of data. At the end of the day, what is my main concern? إن أنا أعرف أعمل efficient retrieval of any data that I store. لو أنا عملت لها storing in such a way that I cannot retrieve it, يبقى أنا مش مهتم بأي حاجة. The reliable storage. Reliable storage يعني ما ينفعش أي information تضيع. The main difference between reliable and something else is that reliable is that I know for sure that any data that I'm going to put, I'm going to find it whenever I search for it. يعني أنا عملت store a piece of information. I'm going to search for it. I'm going to retrieve the very same piece of information. ما ينفعش لا تبوظ ولا تضيع. Finally, maintaining consistent data يعني الداتا بتاعتي تبقى مع بعض consistent. يعني ما ينفعش يبقى عندي constraint that is not maintained أو that is divulged, that is not correct. يعني لو عملت اي constraint على الداتابيس بتاعتي لازم يبقى دايما بيهولد. يبقى المين difference between reliable و consistent ان reliable انا متاكد ان هي موجوده ما ضاعتش, و consistent معناها ان الانفورميشن مظبوطه بكل الكونسترينتس اللي انا حطيتها على الداتابيس بتاعتي. Okay, these are the main concepts that need to be there in any database that I'm going to design. Now, how to structure the database بقى. احنا عايزين في الاخر يبقى عندنا database that is well structured. طب ازاي احنا نوصل لل well structuring ده؟ لازم يكون عندنا a language that we all understand in order for two engineers او two software engineers together to understand the same thing. يعني في الاخر احنا بيجي لنا الداتابيس ده, بيجي لنا a client, someone who needs a website or an application, يجي يقول لنا his needs. For example أنا عايز أعمل ويب سايت for a university, هيقول لنا إن هو عنده for example professors وعنده TAs وعنده students, والprofessor مثلا for example عنده age وعنده email وعنده ID and for example a PhD holding date and so on. عنده شوية information معينة, والTA عنده شوية information معينة, والstudent عنده شوية information معينة. هيقول لنا الكلام ده in English. طب how to express it, how to model it? We need a language that we all agree on. يعني ما ينفعش يجي يقول لي حاجات in English and I take them as is. لازم يبقى عندي language that we all understand because English is ambiguous. يعني ممكن في الآخر اتنين يفهموا حاجات مختلفة من نفس الكلام. However, we need a language that is settled so that all of us understand the same thing. اللانجوج اللي احنا بنستخدمها عشان نموديل a database is called a unified modeling language. This is what This is a modeling language in the field of software engineering. This is a modeling language that we are going to understand the same thing whenever we take a look at it. What is its intention? It is intended to provide a standard way to virtualize the design of a system. يعني what do we need to do? We need to virtualize. يعني we need to see a picture. We need to visualize the design. هنعمل picture, however this picture has a semantic, has a meaning that we all understand. المينينج ده هيبقى واحد لينا كلنا. يعني whenever we see this picture anywhere else, me and you are going to understand the very same thing. This is the beauty of such languages. ان اللانجوجز دي مش بيبقى عليها جدال، هي حاجة معينة هنفهمها كلنا نفس الحاجة. However in English الكلام بيبقى ملخبط. That's why from the English we are going to model a picture أو visualize this design so that we all understand the same thing. Such a methodology is called a unified modeling language. طيب أنا عايزة أقول لكم بقى objectives of this course in general. هو في الآخر this unifying part is just the first main objective that we want to learn. The main objective ان احنا of the first part of this course ان احنا draw a picture of the data. We want to draw a picture of the data to look how the data look like and how different pieces of information interact. يعني عايزين نشوف how الداتا هتبقى شكلها عامل ازاي and how the different data interact together, and we are going to see how we are going to achieve this. فال unified modeling language we are going to learn one unified modeling language that we are going to use. ده أول objective من الكورس that we want to learn. تاني حاجة retrieval أو querying languages of already defined information. يعني whenever we have already the system designed we want to retrieve information. زي ما قلت لكم الداتابيس بتhold information. أنا دلوقتي عايزة retrieve، أروح question الداتابيس question ويرجع لي الانسر in any type in any form، بس في الآخر أنا عايزة أشوف result. الطريقة اللي أنا أسأل بيها الداتابيس is called a retrieval or querying language. This is going to be the second part of this course, and this is a very huge and important part of this course. ده حاجة الناس بتستخدمها كتير قوي and it's covered in so many jobs. So you need to be able to query efficiently. يعني لازم تبقى عارف ازاي تquery وازاي لما يكون عندك a question to transform it into an equivalent or a correct query. The third thing is to avoid redundancies. يعني في الآخر آخر part بقى of this course إن إحنا نحاول avoid redundancies. عايزين ما يكون عندنا الداتابيس بتاعتنا without any redundancies عشان ما يحصلناش أي possible mistakes which are called anomalies, and you are going to learn about them by the end of this course. But these are the three most important objectives of this course, and this is what you need to learn from this course. The first thing, we have a picture of the data, which is the unified modeling language that we are going to learn, is the entity relationship diagram. The entity relationship diagram is a unified modeling language, which is what? It is a picture of the data. It's a picture of the data. طيب. The picture of the data اللي هي اسمها entity relationship diagram, we are going to call it an ERD. ال ERD دي a picture of how the data is going to look like. طيب احنا هيجيلنا زي تكست كأن كلاينت جاي يقول لنا ان هو عايز داتابيس بالشكل الفلاني، عايز يعمل داتابيس بالشكل الفلاني. How are we going to cut it down؟ احنا عايزين في الاخر ان احنا نقسمها لشويه حاجات احنا عارفينها جوه الاي ار دي دي. الاي ار دي دي بتتكون من entities دي دايما بنرسمها in a square زي ما انتم شايفين كده square، هيبقى جواه اسم الانتيتي and any entity is like the object of CS4. يعني لو جه حد بيقول انا عايز اعمل ويب سايت جواه الداتابيس دي جواها عندنا بروفيسورز، وكل بروفيسور عنده شويه داتا كل واحد فيهم عايزين نستور it for them. عندنا students، عندنا for example TAs and so on. كل واحد بروفيسور وستودنت و TA is going to be an entity. It is going to be an object اللي هيحصل منه many instances. يعني في الآخر احنا هيبقى عندنا entity نقدر نكريت منها several instances. يعني نقدر ناخد منها كأننا بنعمل منها كده an object. اوكي؟ So كأن ده الكلاس وكأن الانستنسز دي objects من الكلاس. فأي entity دي زي الكلاس in Java. اوكي؟ والattributes دي زي ايه؟ زي الانستنس variables. If we have an entity كل entity او كل class بيبقى عنده شويه instance variables. for example لو عملنا class student ممكن يبقى عنده instance variable int age, string name, for example double GPA, anything. these are all called attributes وبيتحطوا في oval زي ده oval كده بيطلع من الentity and I'm going to show you how. في كل entity بيبقى عندها several attributes. one or more than one attribute together must be unique. لازم يبقى unique. يعني لازم يبقى عندي حاجة زي for example an ID. ال ID ده بيبقى unique for every one, for every object. يعني لو أنا عندي for example class student لازم يبقى عندي من ال instance variables بتاعته دي واحد فيهم or مش لازم واحد بس, ممكن يكون عندي set. يعني ممكن يكون عندي for example name و GPA, ممكن يكون عندي name و GPA أو first name و last name و GPA, ممكن يكون عندي more than one attribute. however together لازم يكونوا unique. يعني لازم أقدر أخد attribute or set of attributes أقول إن دول uniquely identify the entity. okay, and this is called the primary key. and the primary key is going to be underlined. يعني لو ده عندي الاتريبيوت اللي هو اللي بيونيكلي identify هعمل تحتيه align. اوكي طيب we have different types of attributes. يعني مش كل attributes زي بعض. for example we have what is called a multi-valid attribute. يعني ايه multi-valid attribute؟ يعني الاتريبيوت الواحد ده ممكن يكون عنده more than one value. let's think for example of a telephone. لو احنا قلنا التليفون لو خدنا كل instance ممكن يكون عنده mobile number or more than one mobile number مع التليفون نمبر بتاع التليفون بتاع البيت and so on. so every telephone can have more than one value. such attributes we call them multi-valued. يعني الواحد بيكون عنده more than one value. زي الايميل والتليفون are the most popular examples of multi-valued attributes. طيب عندنا حاجه اسمها composite attribute. يعني ايه composite attribute؟ composite attribute معناه انه consist of more than one part. for example الادرس مثلا, الادرس بتاع البيت it consists of الستريت نيم, الزب الستريت نيم, البيلدينج نمبر, الابارتمنت نمبر and so on. يعني هو address at the end of the day بس consist of several parts. like for example in name consist of the first name, the middle name and last name and so on. كل الحاجات دي اسمهم composite attributes. and we have the final one which is called the derived attribute which has a value that can be calculated. يعني احنا for example عندنا الage ده ممكن يبقى calculated for example من ال year of birth. ولو احنا عارفين ال current year, لو عملنا current year minus ال year of birth هنقدر نوصل لل age. ف this is a derived attribute. عندنا for example ال experience of yearly experience of years that each employee have. يعني كل employee عنده number of experience years. دي نقدر نعرفها من ال starting date بتاعه and the current date. لو عملنا current date minus ال start date هنقدر نعرف ال experience years. so this is a derived attribute. ويبقى شكلهم كده. المالتي فاليد بيبقى double oval. الكومبوزيت بنطلع منه parts that describe the integral parts of the composite attribute. والderived attribute بيبقى dotted in order to differentiate the three types of attributes. and finally we have a relationship which is a relationship between the entities. يعني for example if I have a professor entity وعندي entity for the student, they have a relationship together. مش البروفيسور ده teach the students, teach every student. so we draw this figure okay between the different entities وبنوصلهم بالentity. يعني لو دي entity ودي entity we have a line between them that connects the relation between them. okay, and we have with the relation we have two types of relations or we have two subtypes of the relations. وعندنا حاجة اسمها cardinality. cardinality دي maximum elements that can be derived between both entities. and we have participation which is the minimal one. I will show you that in the examples. okay, now I will show you some guidelines to draw any ERD exercise. These guidelines are the first thing that you see in the practice assignment. okay, this assignment or this practice assignment is intended to help you design a proper ERD for a database system. This can be required by reading the description of each system carefully and identify all relevant information. It's always the case ان انتوا هيجيلكوا a very big exercise، لان ده دايما اللي بيحصل في الواقع، ان الكلاينت بيبقى بيجي يطلب حاجات كتير قوي، اوكي، فهيجي لنا English statements that describe the system that we need. What do we need to do as software engineers? For each exercise, يعني for each such a big example, you are required to draw an ERD. أول حاجة بنعملها أول ما يجيلنا exercise إن إحنا ندرو its ERD، لأن دي أول part هيخلينا agree upon what is going to be done. Now the guidelines. We need to read the problem thoroughly. نصيحة مني ليكو. You always need to read the problem thoroughly before answering anything. عشان في حاجات بتظهر later in the example، يعني في حاجات you think ده معناه ان دي entity او ده معناه ان هي attribute، بعد كده تكملوا قرايه تكتشفوا ان هي حاجه ثانيه. ف don't rush into solving. You need to read the problem thoroughly first. Then you need to identify the relevant information about the database and discard the rest. عاده والكلاينت بيتكلم مش بيبقى عارف ايه relevant بالنسبه لنا، فهو بيقعد يشرح كل حاجه هو عاوزها، and we have things that we know that are important, so you need to identify this important information and discard the rest. وبعد كده we need to identify the required entities and their attributes. Then we need to identify the entities اللي هم زي ال objects، زي ما انا قلت لكم ايه الحاجات اللي هتبقى عندنا عباره عن object وايه ال attributes بتاعتها. Note that you may add any attributes you find relevant. This is not always يعني مش هنصحكم بيه دايما. You need to think very carefully before doing that. Then we need to identify each entity's primary key. يعني لازم لكل entity من الاتريبيوتس بتاعتها دي الاقي واحد primary key، الاقي واحد or طبعا attribute or more than one attribute that together uniquely identify this entity. يعني هقدر اعرف بيه كل واحد من الانتيتي دي uniquely, and you will see how. Then we need to identify relationships between the entities and specify their cardinalities. You will see how we are going to do that. And then you need to take a look at your ERD and different entities and relations, making sure they represent the scenario described precisely. So after you finish, you need just to look at it again in order to make sure إنه ده represent exactly what you need. Note that each entity should have at least one attribute other than the primary key. يعني it's دايما said that any entity should have at least one more attribute عشان تبقى a standalone entity. غير كده كانت ممكن تبقى attribute لحاجة تانية احنا مش واخدين بالنا منها. Okay? Let us start solving this. Now, this is the first exercise in your practice assignment. طبعا it seemed shocking. يعني احنا أول ما نشوفها it's very huge with so many wordings and so on. However, we are going to focus on exactly what we need. We want to break down this statement or this big exercise into exactly what we need. We want to extract what we need. ده اللي بيحصل in real life. In real life you get a client بيقعد يطلب منك حاجات كتير قوي 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 that some of them are important to you and some of them are not. What is important here that you are able to extract what you need. احنا محتاجين ايه mainly؟ احنا محتاجين نطلع ال entities، محتاجين نطلع ال attributes، ومحتاجين نطلع ايه ال relationships between the different entities. Okay, this is the most important thing that I want to get out of this exercise. أول حاجة نصيحتي ليكو read the whole exercise one time and then start getting out these things. طب تعالوا نقراها بقى together one time. مصرية Airlines MA is an airlines company that manages daily flights between cities around the world. In order to optimize its performance and due to frequent scheduling problems MA has faced, the manager decided to build a database system that can help improve the company's performance. Although important, the database built should not be big in size, since the budget for buying the required software and to hire the specialized staff is low. The system should keep track of airplanes, flights, and flight employees. Each airplane has a unique name, type, manufacturing year, and the capacity. Each flight has a unique flight number, departure time, and destination at the departure location. Each scheduled flight has exactly one pilot and at least one flight attendant. Pilots can be scheduled to more than one flight, pilots and flight attendants have respective home bases to which they return at the end of an assigned flight. For both pilots and flight attendants, other information should be stored, such as the staff IDs and personal data, name, address, email, and so on. Only in case of pilots, it is important to keep track of the number of experience years. Okay. احنا كده قرينا مرة الاكسرسايز. We knew what the exercise is about. عندنا airlines company عايزة تعمل database لنفسها. They have several things that they need to keep track of. احنا عايزين نوصل بقى لمين ال entities، كل entity مين ال attributes بتوعها، وال relationships that link or that relates the different entities to one another. طيب هنقراها بقى بشويش and we want to extract these pieces of information. The Masri Airlines is an airline company that manages daily flights between cities around the world. هل الجملة دي أقدر أطلع منها أي حاجة؟ No. هو ما قاليش أي حاجة that the Masri Airline company wants to keep track of. هو بيقول لنا إن هي company بتمانج daily flights. طب هو عايز keep track of إيه؟ عايز يستور عنده إيه؟ We didn't know yet. In order to optimize its performance and due to frequent scheduling problems MA has faced, the manager decided to build a database system that can help improve the company's performance. يعني هو في الآخر بيقول لنا من الجملة دي إن هو عايز يعمل database عشان improve the performance. قال لنا بقى إيه الحاجة اللي عايزها جوه database؟ لسه. يبقى الجملة دي برضو did not give us the information that we need. Although important, the database built should not be big in size, since the budget for buying the required software and to hire the specialist staff is low. طيب هو كده he is just complaining about the problems that they have. However, they did not still tell us what we need to keep track of. Now بقى the system should keep track of airplanes, flights, and flight employees. يبقى هو عايز في الآخر إيه الحاجة اللي هو محتاجها in his database؟ airplanes, flights, and flight employees. يبقى دول عبارة عن إيه؟ هما دول عبارة عن حاجة هنعمل منها different instances. تبقى دي عبارة عن ايه؟ object. دي الحاجة الobject اللي هنقدر نكريت منها different instances. يبقى انا عندي airplane، ممكن نعمل عليها كده سكوير صغير، flights and flight employees. at least لحد هنا I know that I have 3 entities. يعني الايربلين هيبقى عندي كذا ايربلين اقدر اكريت منها، كاني اكريت منها كذا object، كانه زي جافا بالذات ان انا بكريت objects out of a class. فعندي class اسمه airplanes، عندي class اسمه flights، وعندي class اسمه flight employees. I want to get بقى ايه الاتريبيوتس بتاعت كل واحده فيهم. يعني كل واحده فيهم عندها شويه instance variables زي الانستنس variables. each airplane اهي has a unique name, type, manufacturing year and a capacity. يبقى دول عباره عن ايه؟ يبقى بيقول لك ان الايربلين الواحده has a unique name, type, manufacturing year at the capacity. يبقى دول عبارة عن ال attributes of this entity. يبقى أنا عندي unique name, type, manufacturing year and a capacity. يبقى مادام قال لي كلمة unique دي معناها إيه؟ معناها إن this is the primary key of this entity. دي الحاجة اللي uniquely identify this entity. يبقى أنا إيه؟ لما أجي draw ال ERD in the next slide I will have the name, the attribute name underlined علشان هو اللي uniquely identify each airplane. طيب each flight has a unique flight number. يبقى ده attribute للflight, a departure time, a destination and a departure location. يبقى دول attributes بتاعتي، ومادام عندي هنا unique يبقى الflight number بتاعتي is the primary key of this entity. Okay? Now each scheduled flight has exactly one pilot and at least one flight attendant اللي هو المضيف يعني. اوكي سو each flight انا عندي flight وعندي flight employees. فهو بيقول ان جوه الفلايت employees دي عندي pilots وعندي flight attendants، هم دول الامبلويز اللي عندي. طيب والفلايت عندها بقى relationship مع ايه؟ مع البايلوت والفلايت attendant. has دي is a relationship، مش دي حاجه بتلينك flight مع الفلايت employees، يبقى this is a relationship. طيب from this statement what should I conclude؟ هو بيقول لك ان each flight has exactly one pilot and at least one flight attendant. يبقى مين ايه نوع الامبلويز اللي عندي؟ ايه نوع الفلايت امبلويز اللي عندي؟ هم البايلوتس والفلايت اتندنتس، هم دول النوع الامبلويز اللي عندي. يبقى انا كاني عايز a differentiate between pilots و flight attendants. دلوقتي I have one of two problems one of two options. either ان انا هيبقى عندي entity اسمها flight employees وهعمل relationship ما بين flight و flight employees، او مش هيبقى عندي flight employees خالص وهيبقى عندي pilots و flight attendants on their own. ده هيديبند على ايه؟ هيديبند على الاتريبيوتس. هل الاتريبيوتس بتديسكرايب فلايت امبلويز كلهم على بعض؟ يعني انا مش فارق معايا هما بايلوتس ولا فلايت اتندنتس، ولا فارق معايا؟ لو فارق معايا يبقى I need to differentiate them into two different entities. لو مش فارق معايا يبقى احطهم في فلايت امبلويز واحده. تعالوا نقرا بقى كده. Pilots can be scheduled to more than one flight. يبقى البايلوت ممكن يبقى scheduled to more than one flight. Pilots and flight attendants have respective home bases to which they return at the end of an assigned flight. يبقى الهوم bases ده عبارة عن ايه؟ عبارة عن attribute للفلايت employees او البايلوتس والفلايت attendants، كل واحد فيهم لوحده حسب انا هعمل ايه. For both pilots and flight attendants, other information should be stored, such as the staff ID. اوكي، يبقى ده attribute. The personal data اللي هو name, address وemail. يبقى دول الهوم بيزز، الستاف اي دي، نيم وادرس وايميل، دول الاتريبيوتس بتوع البايلوتس والفلايت اتندنتس. يبقى في الاخر لحد دلوقتي الاثنين عندي يعتبروا هم حاجه واحده. وبعدين بقى only in the case of pilots it is important to keep track of the number of experience years. يبقى experience years دي بتتعمل لمين؟ للبايلوتس only. يعني انا عندي هنا هو بيديفرنشيت، يعني experience years دي is an attribute for a only pilots. يبقى ده معناه ايه؟ يبقى معناها ان البايلوتس وفلايت اتندنتس are not treated the same way, so I have to differentiate them. يبقى انا ما عنديش flight employees as one entity، انا عندي two different entities، واحد للبايلوتس واحد للفلايت اتندنت. اوكي، let us but draw the ERD together. Now let us but start drawing the ERD. As we have said عندنا entity اسمها ايه؟ airplane. يبقى هعمل square احط جواه airplane. والايربلين دي كان عندها which entities؟ كان عندها entity name، وكان عندها entity type، وكان عندها entity capacity، وكان عندها entity manufacturing year. And it was said that this name of the airplane is unique. يعني I can uniquely identify each airplane with its name. So كأن every object that I'm going to do out of this class is going to have a unique name. ما ينفعش النيم يتكرر ما بين two different objects. So I'm going to underline it. I'm going to use it as my primary key. زي ما قلت لكم primary key لازم كل entity يكون عندها primary key, and this primary key should uniquely identify each instance out of this entity. Now we also have a flight, which is another entity. والentity دي كان عندها which attributes؟ كان عندها flight number، كان عندها departure time، وعندها departure location، وعندها destination. And it was also said that the number of the flight is a unique one, so I'm going to use it as my primary key. وبعد كده كان عندنا الفلايت employees اللي احنا we decided to split them into two. هيبقى عندنا flight attendant وعندنا pilot. ايه الاتريبيوتس بتاعتهم؟ كان عندهم staff ID، هما الاثنين، عندهم home base، name, address and email. Here also they have staff ID, name, address, and email, and home base. What is the primary key in this case? We have two options. يا إما هيبقى الستاف ID، okay, or the email. ما هما الاثنين unique، هما الاثنين uniquely identify any person. هو كل الناس عندهم a unique ID وكل الناس عندهم a unique email، مفيش اي ايميل بيبقى repeated. طيب what do we choose؟ we always choose numbers over characters. يعني لو عندنا option حاجة فيها ارقام و option حاجة فيها alphabetical letters we always choose the numbers عشان numbers دايما بتبقى easier for in the search. So I'm going to choose a staff ID. This is always a criterion that we all follow. دايما بنختار النمبر او ال IDs over الالفابت لو الاثنين unique. لو ما عنديش option تاني خلاص I will choose it. طيب البايلوت كان عنده حاجة extra which made us اصلا make this split. البايلوت كان عنده ايه؟ كان عنده experience years. طيب هل ال experience years دي a normal attribute؟ I don't think it's a normal attribute. طب تعالوا نتشيك. احنا عندنا what types of attributes؟ عندنا multi-valid attribute. هل ال experience years دي can have multiple values؟ No, it always has exactly one value, so it's not a multi-valid attribute. طب هل is it a composite attribute اللي هو الاتريبيوت اللي كان بيبقى created أو بيبقى built out of different parts؟ لا، هو ال experience years دي بتبقى number of years محددة. طب هل هو a derived attribute؟ It is a derived attribute. مش أنا أقدر أحسبه؟ يعني لو معايا الستارت ديت من ساعة ما البايلوت ده بدأ ومعايا الكارنت year اللي أنا أقدر دايما أوصل لها، مش هقدر أعمل current year minus الستارت ديت، أقدر أوصل للنمبر of experience years اللي البايلوت ده عنده. So I can store as an extra attribute the start date to make the experience years بتاعتي دي a derived attribute. ال derived attribute بنعمله dotted. Why is something like this important؟ عشان تفضل الداتا عندي consistent and reliable. ليه reliable؟ عشان هو هبقى قادر اتاكد ان كل مره الاكسبيرينس years بتبقى calculated صح. يعني if I had a normal attribute يبقى انا لازم اخش جوه بنفسي اغيرها. However if it's derived then whenever I want to access it I'm going to be able to do that and have the correct one. I can get the correct one. اوكي؟ طيب دلوقتي احنا خلصنا الاتريبيوتس اللي عندنا وخلصنا ايه؟ الانتيتيز وخلصنا البرايمري كي. فاضل لنا دلوقتي relationship between the different entities. طب what are the relationships that hold between the different entities؟ عندنا الايربلين والفلايت كان في ما بينهم relationship. في relationship اسمها ايه؟ used in او has. لان الايربلين بتبقى used in a specific flight. عادة في الرامبس كده بنكتب اسم relation او relationship in a verb form. يعني عادة بيبقى in terms of a verb. اوكي؟ طيب احنا كده عندنا relationship ما بين الاثنين دول. طب الفلايت مش بيبقى عندها flight attendant، يبقى الفلايت has a flight attendant. والفلايت برضو عندها pilot، يعني برضو flight ممكن schedules a specific ايه pilot. احنا عندنا كده ايه 3 different relationships. طيب there is something left that I said quickly كده في الأول. عندنا حاجة اسمها cardinality وحاجة اسمها participation. What is the cardinality؟ The cardinality is the following. لو أنا جيت مسكت a specific flight واحدة اهي، اوكي؟ رحت سألت this one flight uses how many airplanes؟ I have 2 answers. I have the maximum case and the minimum case. الماكسيمم case هي cardinality. المينيمم هي participation and I will show you how to draw it. طيب لو عندي one flight بتuse how many airplanes؟ في الماكسيمم one airplane. هل ينفع تستخدم more than one airplane؟ لا، يعني الماكسيمم كيس عندي 1. طب المينيمم كيس عندي ايه؟ هل ينفع فلايت تطير من غير ورا ايربلين؟ هو دايما ده سؤالي عشان اسال participation. هل الفلايت الواحده one flight can have 0 airplanes؟ No it cannot. So it also has at least 1. يعني الماكسيمم 1 والمينيمم 1. دايما بنكتب الماكسيمم الاول وبعد كده المينيمم. فهنا الماكسيمم is 1 والمينيمم is 1. طيب now I got the cardinality and the participation from one flight to the airplane. نعمل العكس. يعني دلوقتي بقى هنعمل ايه؟ هنعمل العكس. هنحاول نشوف الايربلين بقى الواحدة. لو خدت airplane واحدة how many flights is it going to be used in؟ يعني الايربلين الواحدة بتبقى used in how many flights at maximum؟ many، يعني مش هجيب طيارة استخدمها في فلايت واحدة بس، لا بستخدمها في many flights. الماني بقى بتتكتب كده، بتعمل كده. اوكي، this means ان الايربلين الواحدة it is used in many flights. طيب لو انا عندي ايربلين، اوكي، الايربلين دي at minimum هتبقى used for how many flights؟ at minimum هيبقى ايه؟ ما عنديش غير اوبشنز، يا اما 0 يا اما 1. طيب لو انا عندي ايربلين لسه جايبها جديده يبقى هتبقى used in 0 flights، يعني انا عايزه keep track of it، عايزه اسيبها عندي جوه الداتابيس however it has not been used yet. يبقى انا consider ان ينفع يبقى عندي airplanes that are not used لسه جوه any flight، يبقى هتبقى ايه؟ 0. بنحط الزيرو كده as an oval or an zero جنب الايه many side. طيب we need to do this in every side of every relationship that we have. طيب عندنا برضو flight الواحدة بتبقى has how many flight attendants at maximum؟ many، ممكن يكون عندي أكتر من مضيف. طب at minimum هو كان متقال جوه ال question. if we go back to the question, each flight has exactly one pilot and at least one flight attendant. يعني at minimum لازم يبقى عندي one flight attendant، يعني ما ينفعش أطير من غير ولا flight attendant، يبقى المينيمم لازم يبقى عندي ايه؟ one flight attendant. طيب تعالوا نعمل بتاعة البايلوت كمان. الفلايت has how many pilots at maximum؟ it has مكتوب في الاكزامبل في الكويستشن exactly one pilot، يعني احنا مش هنألف من دماغنا. it is said in the question has exactly one pilot، يعني at maximum 1 و at minimum 1، يبقى اكتب at maximum 1 و at minimum 1. you need to take care that these things are set in the question، والحاجات اللي said in the question should be handled as they are in the question عشان انتوا هتبقوا graded على اساس اللي مكتوب جوه الكويستشن. طيب الفلايت اتندنت الواحد بيبقى scheduled او has how many flights in general؟ they have many flights، يعني عادة الفلايت المضيف بيجيله flights مختلفة كتير. و at minimum لو انا عندي flight attendant that is still new ممكن ما يبقاش طلع ولا واحدة، يبقى نحط 0. اوكي، طب البايلوت هيبقى scheduled to how many flights؟ also many. طب و at minimum also 0 لان ممكن يكون بايلوت لسه جديد. these small things اللي هو 0 ولا 1 you may think of it as يعني very مثلا not clear. however في حاجات بتبقى clear from the question، في حاجات that you need to get from the question، وفي حاجات that you get by common knowledge. يعني احنا عارفين for example ان ممكن يبقى عندي flight attendant لسه عمره ما طار. لو عندنا في for example الفلايت بيبقى عندها exactly one airplane، ده مش لازم يبقى موجود في الكويستشن. you need to know it، يعني it's common sense ان لو انا عندي رحله في الطيران at least و at maximum و at minimum لازم يبقى عندي one airplane عشان اقدر اطير. so it has a minimum one and a maximum one. this is an ERD. this is a full ERD that we have drawn now. this ends the first exercise. Now let us start reading the second exercise. We will read it as a whole and then start getting the entities, the attributes and the relationships. طيب we need to store some information about a company. It contains different employees. Each employee has a manager that he or she reports back to. Each employee is identified by the combination of their first and last names. They also have an address and phone numbers with one U. The company has different projects. Each project has a location and a budget. Employees are involved on at least one project. Each project has a manager. Okay, let us read it one more time ونحاول نقدر نطلع منهم ايه the attributes that are valid also as well as the entities and the relationships. We need to store some information about a company. طيب هل الكومباني دي attribute؟ ما نعرفش، محتاجين نشوف هل ليها attributes، هل في حاجة بتدescribe it yes or no. It contains different employees. طيب الامبلوي ده عبارة عن ايه؟ entity ولا attribute؟ لو attribute يبقى احتمال تكون company دي entity، لو مش attribute يبقى company دي اكيد مش entity. طيب each employee has a manager that he or she has to report back to. طيب عندنا one more question that we need to ask ourselves. هل المانجر ده is something different than an employee ولا هل هو employee؟ ما هو المانجر in real life is an employee. طيب هل we combine them together ولا نخليهم separate؟ هيدepend لو ليهم attributes مختلفة أو relations مختلفة أو ولا لأ. each employee is identified by the combination of their first and last names. يبقى أنا متأكد هنا إن الامبلوي بتاعي ده is an entity وعنده attributes first and last names together مع بعض هيعملوا لي primary key بتاع الانتيتي دي. طيب they also have an address which is another attribute وعندهم phone number ما بين كده brackets s. ده معناه ايه؟ ده معناها ان they don't have only one phone number, they have more than one phone number, which means what? ان this is what type of an attribute? This is the multi-valued one اللي بيبقى عنده more than one value. طب the company has different projects. Each project has a location and a budget. يبقى ايه؟ project ده عبارة عن ايه؟ another entity. مش عندها حاجات، مش عندها شوية attributes، يبقى it is another object, it is another entity. طيب ايه الاتريبيوتس اللي عندها؟ عندها attribute location, attribute budget. These are two different attributes for the very same entity. Employees are involved on at least one project. Each project has a manager. يبقى involved دي relationship و each project has a manager. This is another relationship. طب هل do I need to differentiate between employees and managers? I don't see any reason for that. لأن الاتنين قدرنا نحطهم together in a having the same type of entities وعندهم شوية relationships مختلفة, but I will show you how to describe these relationships, differentiate between them. طيب let us start drawing كده this part. We have what type of entities do we have? We have the entity employee, so we need to draw a square نحط جواه employee. وعندنا ايه كمان؟ عندنا project. طيب الامبلوي كان عنده ايه؟ كان عنده first و last name. So this is an attribute. و last underscore name is another attribute. وبعد كده عندنا الادرس وعندنا الفون نمبر. وفون نمبر قلنا ده عبارة عن ايه؟ قلنا عبارة عن multi valid attribute. This is always a trick or something that helps us. دايما لما بنلاقي ما بين brackets and s we know that this is a multi valid attribute. نحط two ovals كده. وقلنا ال combination بتاعت ال first و last name together they form the primary key. يبقى نحط تحت الاتنين خط. يبقى الاتنين مع بعض is the primary key of this entity. طيب بعد كده عندنا project. البروجكت عنده ايه؟ عنده project ID وعنده budget and a location وعندنا البروجكت project ID. هو ده البرايمري كي عشان ده اللي حاجه بتuniquely identify our project. طيب احنا عندنا ان الامبلوي works on a project. دي كانت اول relationship عندنا works on a project. عشان نعرف كل employee بيشتغل في which project. ف this is the first relationship that we have. وقلنا المانجر ده عبارة عن ايه؟ مش هو عبارة عن employee؟ يعني في الاخر المانجرز والemployees دول حاجة واحدة. يبقى احنا عندنا employee, some employee من دول manages a project. احنا قلنا ان كل project عنده one manager. يبقى لازم يبقى في relationship بتلينك ما بين البروجكت والemployee. طب تعالوا نعمل cardinalities of these two relationships. عندنا البروجكت الواحدة بيشتغل فيها how many employees؟ طبعا in general there are many employees that work on a project. مش واحد بس. يبقى احنا عندنا at maximum كتير. طب at minimum هل بيبقى عندنا كل project لازم at least يبقى فيه one employee ولا ينفع ن allow zero employees to work on a project? It depends on you. مفيش حاجة قالت في الquestion ان لازم البروجكت يبقى عنده at least one employee. فاحنا ممكن نقول ان في projects لسه they think of them without assigning any employees to it. ف we can think of projects that have zero employees. طب الامبلوي الواحد بيشتغل in how many projects؟ ممكن يشتغل also in many projects. مفيش حاجة قالت لنا ان الامبلوي بيشتغل only on one project. ممكن يشتغل in many projects. طب الامبلوي بيشتغل at minimum on how many projects؟ يعني ينفع يبقى عندي امبلوي لسه ما بيشتغلش in any project؟ You can define that. However, I think it's more intuitive ان كل employee at least بيشتغل in one project. يعني مفيش employee قاعد فاضي. At least بيشتغل in one project. طيب manages بقى. الامبلوي manages how many projects. يعني لو أنا عندي employee واحد manager واحد ممكن يmanage how many projects in general many. ممكن يmanage more than one project. طيب الemployees المانجرز دول ممكن at minimum احنا بنتكلم هنا managers دي relationship بتربط مين؟ مش بتربط كل الامبلويز، بتربط الامبلويز اللي هم مين؟ اللي هم managers. So at minimum any manager لازم يmanage at least one project عشان يبقى اسمه ايه؟ manager، عشان يخش جوه relationship دي. طيب البروجكت الواحد بيبقى managed by how many employees؟ بيبقى managed by exactly one employee. هو مكتوب كده في الاكسرسايز ان البروجكت الواحد دايما بيبقى عنده exactly one manager. يبقى البروجكت it's managed by exactly one employee, one and only one employee. Now we have only one relationship that is missing من ال question. relationship كانت أول statement in the exercise كانت بتقول إيه؟ in an employee reports back to his direct manager. يبقى each employee has a manager that he or she reports back to. ده exactly the statement of the exercise. يعني احنا عندنا الemployee بيمانج الemployee بي report back to a manager. يعني عندنا relationship بتجمع employee ب another employee. يبقى what is this؟ عندنا حاجة employee بي report back لemployee. يبقى دي عبارة عن ايه؟ حاجة اسمها recursive relationship. relationship between the one and the very same entity. يعني واحد من الانتيتي لنا بي report back، يعني نسميها كده report back to another employee. يعني عندنا relationship in the same entity. This is called a recursive relationship. طيب الامبلوي الواحد بيريبورت to how many managers؟ يبقى عنده كام مانجر؟ بيبقى عنده exactly one manager. يبقى عنده one and only one manager. طب المانجر بيبقى تحتيه how many employees؟ ممكن يبقى تحتيه many employees. يعني المانجر بيمانج more than one employee in at maximum. طب at minimum بيمانج how many employees؟ لو احنا قلنا ان كل واحد at least بيبقى عنده one employee ممكن نحط one. لو احنا we allow for zero يعني ممكن نقول manager لسه مش تحتيه اي employees. لو manager لسه جديد ولسه ما عينوش ليه تيم ممكن يبقى عنده zero employees that report back to them. So this describes the ERD of the second exercise. So now exercise number 3. Now the exercise number 3 برضو another ERD that we want to draw. ال ERD دي جواها ايه؟ نفس الحاجات اللي احنا عملناها in the previous two exercises. نقراها and then we define in the next reading what are my entities, the attributes and the relationships. ITI Center is a training center that provides programming courses. Many courses are popular, each of which has a unique code, name and fee. Introduction to Unix and Java programming are two of the most popular courses. The courses offered vary in length from 1 week to a month. The center keeps track of each instructor's name, phone number and email. Each course is taught by only one instructor, while an instructor may teach several courses. The students can attend several courses over time and may register for many courses at the same time, as long as their timings do not conflict. ITI Center also records contact information about the students and the instructors, although some refuse to give their phone numbers. Okay. Now, عايزين نبتدي نطلع ايه؟ نقراها تاني with the intention to retrieve ال entities, ال attributes وال relationships. ITI Center is a training center that provides programming languages. Okay. احنا عندنا حاجة provide some programming courses. طب programming courses دول هل دول الحاجة اللي احنا we need to keep track of them؟ هل عندهم attributes that describe them so that we need to keep track of them؟ تعالوا نشوف. Many courses are popular, each of which has a unique code, name and fee. يبقى I need to keep track of their code, name and fee. يبقى it is indeed some entity وعندها unique code, name and fee as its entities. As its attributes. I'm آسفة. Introduction to Unix and Java programming are two of the most popular courses. In ERD, we are not interested في أي examples. We are interested in the objects. انما in the classes او الحاجه abstract object we are not interested في objects او examples of this entity. ما احنا مالناش دعوه الكورسز دي عباره عن ايه. دي حاجه بقى جوه الداتابيز، دي حاجه هنعملها insert جوه الداتابيز. however now we are not interested in examples of it, we are just interested in the abstract objects. The courses offered vary in length from 1 week to a month. يبقى what do we need to keep track of؟ اللينث. يبقى احنا كل كورس عنده length معين، محتاجين نعرف ايه اللينث بتاع كل واحد. So we need to keep track of each one's length. The center keeps track of each instructor's name. يبقى احنا عندنا ايه؟ عندنا instructor that we need to keep track of their name والphone number and the email. يبقى احنا عندنا entity اسمها instructor عنده name وphone number وemail as ال attributes بتاعته. Each course، احنا course قلنا فوق خالص already ان هو an attribute is taught by only one instructor. يبقى taught by دي عبارة عن relationship، واحنا عارفين ان الكورس الواحد عنده exactly one instructor، والinstructor الواحد may teach several courses. Okay? The students can attend several courses over time and may register for many courses at the same time as long as their timings do not conflict. يبقى احنا عندنا students وعندهم some relationship ايه مع الحاجات التانية. يعني عندهم for example ان هم بيأتندوا courses. يبقى احنا عندنا student ده عبارة عن entity. انا ليه قررت ان هو entity مع ان هو ما قاليش specific attributes ليه لحد دلوقتي؟ لان هو ممكن يأتند some course، يعني عنده some relationship مع a course اللي هو الentity اللي فوق and we need to describe it and may register for many courses at the same time as long as their timings do not conflict. يعني احنا ممكن register for several courses. Okay? ITI Center also records contact information about the students and instructors, although some refuse to give their phone numbers. يعني لازم يبقى عندنا some contact information like for example الإيميل. أي contact information ممكن نقول إن ده الإيميل هو ده contact information and عندهم إيه phone numbers which is also stored for the students. يبقى دول عندنا الحاجات الإيه ال attributes of the student. Now we want to أول حاجة عندنا as an attribute إيه؟ عندنا course which is the first entity. إيه ال attributes بتاعتها؟ عنده code name fee that we need to pay length These are the attributes that we have for the course. طيب عندنا instructor الانستراكتور عنده email phone number هو contact information بس that we need to store. في anything else for the instructor? The instructor's name كمان مكتوب name phone number and email. Okay, each course is taught by بقى دي ال relationship ما بينهم. وكان عندنا ايه كمان student كنا بنستور ال contact information like for example the email وال phone number بس. طيب أول حاجة we need to get is the primary keys of each entity. طيب ال primary key of the course entity is what? is the code. هو قال إنه إحنا عندنا a unique code for each course. يبقى دي الحاجة that is unique. Even if you think that name could be unique, however مادام قايل لنا إن هو عنده unique code يبقى this is blindly my ID أو my primary key. طيب الانستراكتور بقى عنده إيه؟ عنده email phone number و name. however it has said ان هو ممكن يرفيوز ان هو يدينا الفون نمبر افتكر و بس. فهو ممكن نختار الايميل we can choose the email او we can give them an ID an instructor ID علشان نقدر identify each instructor on their own. You could have chosen an email برضو, it's fine, it is also correct. والstudent برضو we can choose الايميل as a contact information, or we can add a student ID for each student. وكل student يبقى عنده a unique student ID. يبقى أنا كده عندي a unique attribute for each of the different entities that we have. طيب بعد كده عندنا relationships. عندنا الانستراكتور ده teach a course، وعندنا الستودنت بيبقى register for a course. Okay, now we want to do the cardinality. الكورس الواحد بيبقى taught by how many instructors؟ هو قايل لنا ان each course is taught by only one instructor. يبقى انا I'm sure that the one course is taught by one and only one instructor. طب الانستراكتور الواحد teach how many courses؟ teach at maximum many. وممكن نقول بقى المينيمم يا اما الانستراكتور teach 0 courses او at least one course. It depends on if you allow your instructors to be teaching 0 courses or not. Let's say ان احنا we don't allow ان كل instructor at least عنده one course، يبقى at minimum one. طيب now الستودنت الواحد ممكن يبقى registered ل how many courses؟ in general many. هو قال as long as their timings do not conflict ينفع يبقى registered ل more than one course, so it's fine. ممكن يبقى عنده many. طب و at minimum احنا هنا برضه we are free. هل do we want to keep track of students that are not registered to any course ولا لأ؟ If we allow that, then we can have 0 students that have 0 courses registered. يعني أنا كده keep track of students that are not registered to any course. Okay? طب الكورس الواحد بيبقى فيه how many students؟ many students. طيب ممكن يبقى عنده 0 students ولا لأ؟ برضه depends. بس هنقول ممكن يبقى عندنا كورس لسه محدش عمله register خالص فهيبقى عنده 0 students. Now this is the cardinality and the participation of each and every entity. كده احنا we solved the 3 exercises, the first 3 exercises of the practice assignment. There are still remaining some exercises and I advise you to solve them on your own عشان practice. Now we want to get back to the keys. انا قلت لكم الكي اللي احنا شفناه لحد دلوقتي هو ايه؟ البرايمري كي اللي هو كان عبارة عن ايه؟ حاجة uniquely identify my entity. طيب I want to describe it more. في حاجة عندنا حاجة اسمها super key. super key ده is a very big pool of keys. دول ايه الاتريبيوت اللي اقدر اسميه a super key؟ هو an attribute or a set of attributes that is used to uniquely identify all attributes in a relation. هو ده اللي انا قلته عن primary key قبل كده صح؟ However I'm going to describe it more now. فthink with me ان السوبر كي بتاعي ده is any attribute or set of attributes that uniquely identify each one in this entity. يعني لو جبت student وعنده ID وإيميل هقول ال ID is a super key والإيميل is a super key وال ID والإيميل is a super key. طب لو أنا عندي كمان name والنيم ده مش حاجة uniquely identify، يعني لو خدت النيم لوحده ممكن يكون عندي 2 students اسمهم أحمد for example. What does this mean؟ لو أنا عندي ID ونيم مع بعض هما سوبر كي برضو، لأن أنا لو عندي ID 1 اللي أنا عارف بالظبط إن هو واحد محدد وعندي نيم برضو مع الاي دي، مش انا لو معايا الاي دي والنيم مع بعض برضو هقدر اطلع واحد بس that is unique. يعني لو قلت لك الاي دي 1 والنيم احمد مش هتطلع لي بني ادم واحد. طب لو قلت لك الاي دي 2 والنيم عمر مش هتقدر تطلع لي برضو واحد بس. يبقى اي حاجه اي attribute or set of attributes that together هيقدروا يطلعوا لي واحد بس that can uniquely identify كل attribute من دول في الانتيتي دي، يبقى this is called a super key. اوكي ف this is a very big pool. طيب الكانديديت كي ده عباره عن ايه؟ الكانديديت كي ده is the second thing that you need to learn. candidate key is a super key، يعني هو واحد من البولز ده بس عنده constraint، يعني هو subset منه، يعني ده السوبر كي ممكن نقول ان ده الكانديديت كيز بتاعتنا هما شويه منهم. ايه بقى الحاجه؟ ان احنا no subset of it is another super key. يعني لو خدت الاتريبيوت او السيت اوف اتريبيوتس اكشلي اللي انت اديتهم لي كسوبر كي دول، ولو قعدت اخد كل بارت منهم ما لقيتش ان ولا بارت منهم is also another super key، يبقى then this is called a candidate key. fine؟ يعني لو انا معايا set of attributes كل واحد فيهم is not a super key، مع بعض هما super key however كل واحد منهم لوحده is not a super key, then this is called a candidate key. fine. طب ايه بقى ال primary key in this case؟ ال primary key ده واحد chosen candidate key. primary key ده what is it at the end of the day? It is exactly one chosen candidate key. يعني ال primary key ده عبارة عن candidate key وcandidate key ده عبارة عن super key. ففي الآخر هو primary key ده عبارة عن super key بس عنده constraint بتاع إن no other subset of it is a super key. okay. طيب let's have an example just to demonstrate it more. لو أنا عندي attributes ID و email و name دول 3 different attributes and we know in ال ID and ال email each uniquely identifies each tuple أو each instance من ال entity بتاعتي. يعني ال ID is unique and the email is unique. However the name is not unique. يعني النيم ده alone is not unique. not unique. okay. طيب if I want to enumerate all the super keys that I have, the ID and the email are super keys. The ID لوحده والemail لوحده are super keys. The ID والname are super keys. الemail والname are super keys والتلاتة مع بعض super keys. okay. يعني أنا عندي ID لوحده email لوحده ID وemail together ID ونame email ونame وايدي وايميل ونيم. يعني الحاجه الوحيده الميسنج ان انا يبقى عندي النيم on its own لان النيم لوحدها does not uniquely identify each row ف it's not a super key. طب مين ال candidate keys of all those؟ يعني لو عملنا enumerating لthem هل for example الاي دي لا بلاش نبتدي بدي الاي دي ايميل ونيم دول candidate key؟ تعالوا نتشيك. احنا بنتشيك ازاي؟ هنمسك اول واحد. هل الاي دي لوحده is a super key؟ yes. مش الاي دي لوحده is a super key؟ الاي دي لوحده اقدر الاقيه هنا جوه السوبر كيز. ده معناه ان this is not a candidate key. لو انا لقيت part منه that also is a super key يبقى this is not a candidate key. طب الايميل والنيم هل الايميل لوحده is a super key؟ yes الايميل لوحده is a super key يبقى this is not a candidate key. طب عندي اي دي ونيم هل النيم لوحده is a super key؟ لا. طب الاي دي لوحده is a super key؟ يبقى this is not a candidate key. طب ناخد الايميل لوحده هل الايميل لوحده في اصلا منه اي subsets؟ لا. ما هو الايميل ده كلمه واحده ده اتريبيوت واحد بس. اي اتريبيوت واحد هو اكيد كانديديت كي لان مفيش اي بارت منه. هو احنا هنا بنتكلم على ايه proper parts يعني proper sub parts. اوكي proper subsets. اوكي فالاي دي لوحده والايميل لوحده are two candidate keys. انا بقى كبرايمري كي اقدر اختار اي واحد من دول and as I told you we always benefit numbers او we always يعني prefer numbers over letters. فانا هختار ايه؟ هختار ID in this case I will choose ID over email عشان ال ID will consist of numbers so I will choose the ID in this case. okay. let us solve this exercise. given a relational schema R يعني عندنا يعني think of it as the ERD يعني عندنا ERD. اوكي وعندنا two different keys for one entity. يعني think of it ان احنا عندنا entity RD كأنها entity for now and you will get to know what is a relational schema in the next or التوتوريال اللي بعدها. entity وعندها ايه two super keys K1 و K2 دول two super keys. يعني I know for sure that each one of them uniquely identifies this entity. we want to prove or disprove the following. لو أنا عندي K1 intersection K2 is a super key yes or no. يعني احنا لو معانا K1 ده super key لوحده و K2 ده super key لوحده. لو خدنا their intersection هل their intersection is necessarily another super key yes or no. طبعا the statement is false. ليه؟ تعالوا نفكر لو K1 ده consists of two parts P1 و P2 و K2 consists of two parts P2 and P3. يعني دول حاجتين ودول حاجتين. like for example هنا قلنا name و ID يعني تخيلوا ده name و ID وده name و email. ده name و ID وده ID لا ده name لا نخليها ده ID و name وده name and email. يعني الحاجة الcommon ما بينهم is what if we take the intersection between K1 و K2 what is it? It is the name. هل النيم is a super key? No it is not. يعني مش شرط الحاجة that is common between any two different super keys يبقى another super key. يبقى the statement is necessarily false. طيب I will show you a much easier example. لو أنا عندي K1 is ID and K2 is email. What is the intersection between K1 و K2? It is 5. It is nothing. It's empty. مفيش أي intersection ما بينهم. هل ال empty string ده الحاجة الفاضية دي ينفع تكون super key؟ is this something that uniquely identifies each row? No, definitely not. This is one proof or this is another proof. The counter example for the statement, so this statement is definitely false. The next one. If I have K1 و K2 لو خدت الunion بتاعهم هل الunion بتاعهم is another super key? Yes, indeed this statement is true. Why is it true? لو أنا عندي K1 ده ID. This is something that uniquely identifies each row. مش لو انا مهما زودت عليه هو هيفضل برضه بيونيكلي ايدنتيفاي. يعني لو اديتك ID 1 عرفت تطلع لي exactly one instance يبقى انا لو اديتك النيم والاي دي مع بعض برضه هتطلع لي one instance. طب لو اديتك الاي دي والايميل مع بعض برضه هتطلع لي one instance. لو اديتك ID ونيم وايميل يبقى مهما قعدت ازود على السوبر كي it will always still have its property of uniquely identifying each row مهما قعدت ازود عليها attributes. لان في الاخر هو اصلا subset منه بيقدر يجيب لي one instance يقدر يسلكت لي واحد كده من الانتيتيز دي. فاكيد مهما I added to it as much as I want of attributes I will also at the end of the day get exactly one instance. So it will still be a super key. يبقى it is a super key. If K1 is a super key, then adding any additional part will keep it a super key. Will keep its property of being a super key. Will keep its property of uniquely identifying each instance من الentity دي. If I have K1 و K2 بقى are not super keys, are candidate keys. Candidate keys معناها ايه؟ no part of it is another super key. هل بقى الunion بتاعهم is a candidate key؟ طيب I will tell you this is something very easy. لو أنا عندي K1 ده ID و K2 ده أي حاجة email which are both candidate keys. لو أنا خدت ID و email مع بعض اللي هو الunion بتاعهم هل الunion بتاعهم ده is a candidate key؟ ايه معناه candidate key تاني؟ we want to repeat what is a candidate key. معناه ان مفيش subset منه that is another super key. طب لو خدت subset من ده هو ده ايه؟ مش ده candidate key اللي هو عبارة عن ايه اصلا؟ مش عبارة عن super key يبقى ده اكيد not a candidate key. اكيد لان اصلا الunion بتاعهم ده is building the union of two super keys. فاكيد there is a part out of it that is another super key. يعني اكيد ال K1 لوحده ده is a super key وال K2 ده لوحده is a super key. يبقى اليونيون بتاعهم مستحيل يطلع لي حاجة that does not have any part that is a super key. يبقى the statement is false اكيد. If we want to consider this union, K1 which is a subset of it is also a super key as well as K2. Both of them, each one of them is a super key. لو خدنا ده ID و email اليونيون بتاعهم is ID و email السبست بتاعه is ID which is a super key. ما هو candidate key معناه super key على طول يعني أكيد ده super key. وإيميل لوحده ده is also another subset that is also a super key at the end of the day. So there are parts, there are subparts أو subsets out of the received أو out of the resulting union that is a super key. Hence, it's not definitely a candidate key. And this is a proof. You need to prove it يعني step by step علشان تقدر to prove إن statement دي false أو true. لو أنت عايز to prove إن هي false, it's enough to give me a counter example. I will accept any counter example. So if you give me something like that, إنك تقولي إن K1 ده is ID و K2 ده is email و subset of the union of them هيبقى ID لوحده which is a super key. Hence, it's not a candidate key. يبقى I will accept this as an answer. Okay? Now, thank you for listening. I hope that everything was clear enough. I tried my best to demonstrate everything that I can using the available tools. Please do not hesitate to question me if anything was not clear enough. And I wish you the best of luck in this summer course. and please be aware that other tutorials are up to be there, and please listen to them in timely manners. Thank you.